Welcome back to Infinite Podcast, everybody. I'm here with Simon, and today we're diving into a hot topic, intellectual property. Is it fueling or failing the American dream? IP plays a massive role in innovation, but at what cost, right, Simon? Let's unpack how it's been a game changer for creativity, yet poses some serious challenges too. What's your take on this, buddy?
Oh, for sure, Joe. Intellectual properties like that double-edged sword. On one end, it's pumping out creative juices by protecting people's brainchild, but flip the coin, and it's like a giant roadblock stopping others from getting their hands dirty with innovation. Honestly, as cool as owning a piece of your mind sounds, does it have to be such a buzzkill for everyone else trying to pitch in? What do you think, man?
That's a killer point, Simon. It reminds me of when some companies hoard patents just to block others from building on ideas. It's like, come on, let the little guy have a shot. Sure, protecting your work is important, but at what point does it stop helping and start hindering? We got to find that balance, you know?
Yeah, Joe, you hit the nail right on the head there. It's a bit ridiculous when you think about companies playing this keep-away game with patents. It's like saying, oh, I might use this someday, maybe, so you can't have it. Doesn't that kind of stifle the whole spirit of innovation? We should be pushing for a system where sharing and building upon ideas is the norm, not hoarding them like it's some kind of treasure trove. What do you say to that, huh?
Absolutely, Simon. It's worth pointing out that historically the U.S. has thrived on innovation. Back in the day, patent laws helped small inventors become big-time industrialists. Think Edison or Bell. Today, though, it's a different ballpark. About half of all patents now are owned by just a few giant corporations. It underlines this shift from supporting individual inventors to bolstering corporate powerhouses. This could really skew our view of the American dream today, don't you think? How do we keep the field fair?
Oh man, that's a tough cookie to crack, Joe. Like, we've gone from cheering on the little guy with bright ideas to watching these giant corporations taking over the patent playground. Makes you wonder if the American dream is more about who's got the bigger stick rather than who's got the best idea, right? How do we even start to level out this playing field? What do you think could turn this train around, Joe?
You know, Simon, leveling the playing field might mean really shaking up how patent laws work today. We're kind of stuck in a cycle where big gets bigger and small struggles to get a look in. One idea could be like shortening the duration of patents. It could make those innovations reach the public domain faster, making them more accessible. Also, promoting open source platforms could encourage a more collaborative environment, which directly feeds into boosting the spirit of innovation. These changes might just help keep the American dream alive for everyone, not just the giants, you know?
Those are solid points, Joe. But let's really chew on this. Shortening patent durations sounds sweet in theory, but wouldn't that just have like the big sharks circling faster, ready to gobble up innovations the second they hit the public domain? About open source, totally cool. But doesn't that kind of scare off some inventors who worry about making a living if everything's free to use? We need a balance where creativity gets rewarded but not stifled. How do we make sure everyone has a fair shot but still feels safe to dive into the innovation pool? What's your take on striking that balance, dude?
Man, you're diving deep, Simon. It's a classic tug-of-war situation. Protect the inventor but fuel innovation for the masses. The big sharks will always swim about, no doubt. But what if there were incentives, like grants or tax breaks for inventors who open source their work? It's about giving them another way to thrive without locking down ideas for too long. Plus, building a culture that values contributing to a bigger pool of shared knowledge can really energize innovation while keeping individual rewards intact. It's about finding the sweet spot where both the community and the creators win.
Yeah, Joe, that's a spicy meatball of an idea. Incentives. Giving out those grants or tax breaks might just be the carrot that lures inventors to share more openly. So it's like we're not just telling them to give away their hard work for free, but we're making it worth their while. And about building this culture that cheers on sharing. Do you think it's really possible to shift that mindset in today's competitive world? Like, how do we start changing that tune, buddy?
Uh, Shifting the whole mindset, that's like trying to teach an old dog new tricks, right? But it's not impossible. Starts with education, like educating upcoming inventors and the public about the benefits of sharing versus hoarding. Plus, highlighting success stories where open source and collaboration actually led to bigger wins. And hey, imagine if patent offices were like Oprah. You get a patent and you get resources. Everybody gets support. That definitely make inventors feel secure and rewarded while encouraging sharing. What better way to stoke that fire of innovation, huh?
Oh man, that's kind of a fairy tale scenario with the patent office going full Oprah Joe, but it does paint a pretty picture. But let's like poke at it a bit. Even if we roll out the red carpet with resources and support, there's still this giant hurdle bureaucracy. It's like thick and slow. Inventors could get tangled in so much red tape that all these perks don't seem so shiny anymore. Also, about this whole education shift. Yeah, teaching the value of sharing sounds awesome, like share your toys, kiddos. But convincing folks who've spent years on their inventions to just hand it over for the greater good, that's tough cookies, dude. Are we sure they'd buy into this before getting something tangible in return? What do you think could really convince them, huh?
You're hitting the nail on the head, Simon. The bureaucracy in the IP system is like wading through a swamp. You're right about that slowing everyone down. But here's something to chew on. Currently in the US, getting a patent isn't just slow, it can be crazy expensive, making it tougher for solo inventors and small startups. Look, back in 1790, patents were simpler, designed to really push forward ingenuity. The first one was given out in less than a month. Fast forward, according to recent stats from the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office, it takes an average of about 24 months, that's 2 years, to get a standard patent issued. Furthermore, post-grant opposition procedures can drag inventors into legal battles, sapping funds and energy that could be better spent on innovation. These issues complicate our view on whether IP rights today still fuel the American dream, or if they've started to constrict it. It's not just about granting support, it's about streamlining what becomes a bottleneck to creativity. How do we make this system agile again? What can actually convince modern inventors that sharing doesn't mean losing? These are the million-dollar questions, buddy.
Whoa, 2 years to get a patent. That's like waiting for a slow cooker meal when you're already starving. We've got to figure out how to put this process on turbocharge, don't we? What if we had a fast track system that doesn't break the bank? Might keep those creative juices flowing rather than bottlenecking them, huh? What's your take on speeding things up, Joe?
Absolutely, Simon. Speed is essential. Speaking of things that tie us down, let's dive into something nostalgic with a twist. Disney and the Copyright Extension Act. Ever thought about why Mickey Mouse isn't public domain yet? Let's unpack this and see if long copyright terms are really about protecting creativity or just corporate clutching. What's your angle on this, buddy?
Oh man, Disney and that Copyright Extension Act. It's like they've got Mickey Mouse locked down in a high security vault, huh? They call it the Mickey Mouse Protection Act, sort of jokingly. But it's no joke how this thing stretches copyright terms longer than a cross-country road trip. But tell me, Joe, protecting Mickey for almost a century, does that really boost creativity, or is it just keeping all the good toys in one sandbox where no one else can play? Smells a bit like it's more about holding on to those dollar bills rather than fostering new tales. What do you think? Are we stifling fresh stories for the sake of cashing in on the old?
Simon, you've nailed what a lot of folks feel is the heart of the issue with these epic long copyright terms. Let's lay down some more context here for our listeners. Originally, copyrights lasted only 14 years. They were based on the idea that it would give just enough time to profit off an idea, but not stifle future innovations. Fast forward to today. Due in large part to lobbying efforts like those by Disney, we've seen copyright terms extending to life plus 70 years for individual creators and up to 120 years for corporate holdings. With stories being locked away this long, Smaller creators often find themselves unable to tap into or reinvent classic folklore and iconic characters that could inspire entirely new works. This isn't just a matter of artistic expression, it's big league economics. Having significant content under lockdown challenges newcomers who might not have the legal prowess or deep pockets to navigate these waters. So, while yes, companies lock this stuff down to secure revenue, as you pointed out about Disney, there's a substantial debate here about whether such actions clamp down on broader cultural and creative progression. I mean, protecting a creation is fair, but when do protections become excessive barriers?
Yeah, diving deeper into that, it's like these copyright extensions kind of feed into a bigger issue. The thing is, Joe, history shows us this isn't just about one company or even one industry. It's a pattern, right? Like, take the earlier days. Folks could use stories or characters from popular culture way sooner, adding their twists and turns, which really just pumped more creativity into the cultural bloodstream. Once those terms got super stretched out, smaller creators had to pivot or ditch projects. Even attempting to build on classic inspirations now has folks tiptoeing around potential legal landmines. Plus, let's look at public domain. Historically, it's supposed to enrich our shared culture by eventually giving public access to artistic works. But with current laws, works from the 20th century are locked down tight as drumskins. We're missing out on this whole generation of arts entering the public sphere, creating kind of a cultural lag. Does that make sense? We protect creators, sure, but maybe we're also blocking a flood of fresh takes and innovations that could come from wider access to notable works. What's your feeling here, man? Should there always be such a tight grip, or is it time to let some things go and see what shakes loose?
Man, Simon, you just hit the jackpot of points there. It's like we're guarding a treasure chest that everyone forgot they owned a part of. Imagine the untapped creative potential just waiting to be unleashed if some of these classics were set free. What wild, new stories could we be missing out on? This begs the question, are we really honoring our cultural heritage by locking it away, or are we just stunting our own growth? What do you think? Time for a change.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's like we're sitting on a gold mine of stories that could kickstart a whole renaissance of creativity if only we let them out to play. I mean, are we curators or are we creators? Maybe it's high time we stop hoarding and start reinventing. What wild new twist could we see on old classics? I'm thinking Mickey Mouse in space?
Mickey Mouse in space? Now that's a thought. It really opens the door to reimagining old characters in thrilling new contexts. Just think about all those classic tales. What if they got a modern makeover? Could totally reshape our cultural landscape, huh? But do you think folks are ready to see their childhood icons flipped on their heads? What's your take, Simon?
That's a juicy idea, Joe. Flipping old tales on their heads. I get the appeal, totally. But, we gotta consider folks who cherish these classic characters just the way they are, right? It's like messing with a childhood memory or that favorite old t-shirt that fits just right. Some people see these icons as a sacred, part of their personal and our cultural identity. Slapping a modern twist on them might not always sit well because it could feel like we're rewriting history or disrespecting the original creator's visions. Plus, there's this whole layer of emotional connection that could get muddled up. So while it's fun to imagine Mickey Mouse taking on aliens, do we risk alienating die-hard fans who want to preserve the nostalgia? What do you think, Joe? Is it worth potentially rattling that nostalgia cage?
You're spot on, Simon. Striking that balance between innovation and preservation is key. We've got to ask ourselves, how much change is too much, and who really gets to decide? It's a fine line between refreshing creativity and respecting tradition. Maybe this is just the beginning of a bigger conversation about how we manage copyrights and cultural icons moving forward. What changes would best serve both the creators and the community? That could be a whole other chapter worth exploring. What's your take, listeners?
Speaking of striking that balance between tradition and innovation, Joe, it reminds me of some inventors who really push the envelope, sometimes straight into the realm of the impossible. Take the idea of a perpetual motion machine. Every few years, Someone claims to have cracked it, right? Patent offices see these wild ideas that just defy the basic laws of physics. Imagine this dude walking into the patent office, all excited with blueprints for his revolutionary perpetual motion machine. What a sketch that would be. Let's dive into that, how these wide-eyed ideas stack up against the gritty reality of IP hurdles.
Oh man, Simon, imagining that scene is priceless. Here's this inventor, right? He strolls into the patent office, eyes twinkling with excitement, clutching those blueprints like they're golden tickets. And there he goes, laying it all out, his dream of a machine that runs forever without an energy source. But you've got these seasoned patent officers who've seen it all, and they're just rubbing their temples thinking, here we go again. But seriously, the perpetual motion machine. It's like the holy grail of impossible inventions. The laws of thermodynamics really aren't on their side, yet every few years someone is absolutely convinced they've outsmarted basic science. What cracks me up, though, is not just the audacity, but how it highlights bigger issues in the patent world. Like, when should the patent office step in and say, buddy, maybe try Physics 101 first? It kind of begs the question, man. Where do we draw the line between encouraging innovation and just entertaining fairy tales?
Honestly, Joe, it's like there's a thin line between being an inventor and turning into a modern-day alchemist. It gets you thinking, how many wild patents are out there that are less about groundbreaking tech and more about chasing myths? Where does the dream end and reality begin in the world of inventions?
You're so right, Simon. It's wild to think about, right? The line between genius invention and fairy tale gadgetry is thinner than we might like it to be. There's almost this kind of charm in thinking someone out there still believes they can pull energy out of thin air. Talk about optimism. But seriously, wrapping your head around some of the things folks have tried to patent, it's more entertaining than a bucket full of comedies. Like, imagine if there was a patent for, I don't know, a broom that sweeps on its own but powered by invisible fairies. Patent officer'd probably need a stiff drink after reading that application, huh? It does show us, though, man, that dreamers are still dreaming, even if it means pushing against the boundaries of reality, or let's be honest, sometimes crashing right through them. What a crazy, inspiring world we live in, huh?
Oh, definitely, Joe. The world of patents is like a wild west of ideas. Some are gold, others, well, they're more like fool's gold. Historically, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has seen some pretty out-there submissions, especially before 2010. That's when they actually still entertained applications for perpetual motion machines. They even had a category for it until they realized it was like setting up a welcome sign for science fiction. Nowadays, to even file a patent application for such devices, the inventor must provide a working model that physically proves the concept. This shift was a big wake-up call because it filtered out those who were mixing dreams with reality from those just dreaming in high def, you know what I mean? But looking back at other wild patents, and there have been many, like the infamous animal toy, which was essentially a stick labeled fetch stick for pets in 1999, or stuff like a method for swinging on a swing, patented by a kid in 2002, it does show how playful and out-of-the-box human creativity can get, even if sometimes that creativity dips into the absurd. It frames this whole discussion around not only what's technically possible, but also stretches the dialogue to what constitutes a valid idea worth legal protection. The balance between fostering innovation and maintaining realistic scientific boundaries, it's tough but crucial. What do you think keeps inventors ticking despite these massive hurdles? Huh?
You know, Simon, it's that undying spark of curiosity, right? Even against the absurd, inventors have this burning drive to ask, what if? And honestly, isn't that what pushes humanity forward? This blend of crazy ideas and brilliant breakthroughs, it's like a recipe for progress. What better force to fuel our future inventions, huh? Maybe the next big thing is just another absurd idea away. Speaking of pushing boundaries, how about we dive into some of those tech myths that turned out to be unexpectedly true?
Oh, diving into that, Joe. It's like asking if having a bottomless ice cream tub would ever get boring. Sure sounds sweet, but then what about variety? Locking up ideas forever might seem like a win for the original creator. But man, what about all the flavors of innovation we'd miss out on?
Yeah, you've really got a point there, Simon. Like, I get the appeal of wanting to protect your creation for eternity, right? Who wouldn't want their masterpiece safeguarded forever? But here's where it gets tricky. Doesn't that kind of hoarding stifle everyone else's creative pulse? Just think about it. When you lock up an idea for too long, you might be blocking the next big breakthrough. Someone out there could take your idea, twist it, and turn it into something even more amazing, beneficial for society as a whole, you know? But with endless IP protection, we're just stopping those potential innovators dead in their tracks. It's like, uh, imagine having only one type of car engine because the original was never allowed to be improved upon by others. Crazy, right? We'd miss out on all sorts of advancements. And isn't advancement what's supposed to drive us forward? What do you think?
Totally, Joe. It's like sitting on a bench watching a parade of possibilities pass by. Infinite IP protection sounds great for the individual, but it's kind of like putting creativity in a chokehold. You've got to ask, what are we losing out on here? Let's be real. Progress thrives on iteration and innovation. Building on past ideas is how we move forward. Take medicine or tech advances. If those were locked down forever, we'd still be back in the Stone Ages. Technically speaking, not literally, but you get the point. Clinging too tightly to an idea can hold society back. It's like, okay, I understand protecting your work, but there's a balance, right? We need to foster a culture where ideas can bloom into bigger and better things, benefiting everyone, not just the originators. Long term, we got to think about the greater good. What's your spin on this, Joe?
Man, Simon, you're hitting the nail on the head. It's like martial arts. You take what someone else has developed, learn it, adapt it, make it your own. Imagine if Bruce Lee decided, nope, only I can use Jeet Kune Do. Where would mixed martial arts be today? Stuck in the past, that's where. Protecting ideas is crucial, sure, but evolution of those ideas, that's critical. If we're not building on the past, we're just standing still. And who wants to stand still when there's so much more out there? Let the ideas flow, let them evolve. That's how society leaps forward, man.
Oh, dead on, Joe. It's like cooking. Imagine if the first person who ever made a pizza said, "That's it, no one else can top this dough." We'd never get to enjoy a good old pepperoni, or dare I say, pineapple topping, right? Keeping things too close just stops the recipe from getting better. Let's keep those ideas cooking. What's next in our menu of wild thoughts, Joe?
Ha! Definitely, Simon. It's all about adding those new toppings, ideas, to make something even better. So speaking of evolving ideas and mixing things up, it got me thinking, what do you reckon is the next big thing that's just waiting for a little remix or reboot? Something currently gathering dust that could seriously benefit from some fresh eyes and minds tinkering with it.
Uh, that's a thinker, Joe. Um, you know what's been on my mind lately? Old tech that's just sitting in our junk drawers. Like, think about all those early smartphones and gadgets. Tons of potential there for some genius to take apart and maybe mash up into something new. But here's where it ties back to our endless IP protection chat, right? If those gadgets are bound by like ancient patents or copyrights, they're pretty much off limits for the dreamers and tinkerers. How cool would it be if those restrictions eased up after a while? It's kind of like, imagine if someone discovered a way to reuse old tech components to, I don't know, build affordable tech for developing areas or create environmental solutions or any crazy innovative thing we haven't seen yet. It's all about letting those old ideas breathe and inspire new uses. Don't you think that'd push us forward a bit? What's sticking out to you, Joe?
Absolutely, Simon. There's a whole treasure trove of potential locked away in those old drawers filled with dusty tech. It's just waiting for the right minds to unlock it, minds that could be bogged down by those heavy IP chains. Imagine what could happen if we lightened that load, if we allowed these creative thinkers to reinterpret and repurpose without fear of stepping on legal toes. It makes you wonder about the broader impacts of long-term IP protections, not just on technology, but on innovation as a whole across industries. What could we accomplish if some of these barriers were lowered? What do you think?
Joe, speaking of barriers and innovation, it kind of naturally brings us to the whole drama around patent wars. It's like when these tech giants clash over who owns what idea, it's not just a spat in court. These battles shape what tech we end up with and how fast we get it.
Uh, yeah, that's spot on, Simon. These patent wars aren't just courtroom dramas, right? They seriously dictate the pace and direction of innovation. It's kind of like when two giants are duking it out. Where does that leave the smaller players or the consumer? And what about the aftermath? Like after all the legal dust settles, who really benefits from these clashes? Is it just the companies standing tall, or do we see real tech advancements reaching us, the end users? What's your take on that, man?
Uh, Absolutely, Joe. You hit the nail on the head there. When it comes to these patent wars, right, I think it's a double-edged sword for sure. On one side, yeah, companies get to protect their interests, which is like super important for driving them to innovate. But then on the flip side, these prolonged battles, they can seriously stifle the overall pace of tech advancements. It's like every time two big shots lock horns over a patent, the innovation train has to stop and wait for it all to blow over. And that delay, it's not just slowing down those companies, but potentially holding back the whole sector. Plus, let's not forget the costs. Those legal fees are no joke. The money dumped into these fights could probably fund a dozen startup ideas or more. Guess what I'm saying here is, while these companies duke it out, we're stuck waiting for the next big thing, which could already have been on our shelves, improving lives. So really, who wins here? Maybe in the short term, one company gets the victory, but in the grand scheme, feels like progress takes the hit. What are your thoughts about swinging this process into something more productive, Joe?
You're right on target there, Simon. You mentioned turning these battles into something more productive. That's intriguing. Like imagine if the energy, time, and mountains of cash dumped into these wars were redirected. What if we use some kind of mediation or collaborative framework where companies could challenge each other creatively instead of legally? And here's another twist. What if these resources were pushed towards open innovation projects, where businesses could pool their patents somehow for a greater good without losing out on their competitive edge? It sounds like utopia, but maybe it's not that far-fetched. It's like every patent war ends with one winner, right? But this notion flips that. It could be a win-win for multiple players, including society. We might see leaps in technology and solutions we can't even imagine yet because no one's hoarding their piece of the puzzle. Doesn't that kind of reshape how we look at progress and competition, moving from isolation to collaboration? What do you think about that angle, Simon?
Oh, Joe, that's like turning a battleground into a playground. Imagine all those big brains working together instead of butting heads. We might actually get to see some real sci-fi stuff come to life. Let's not just stop the wars, let's start a revolution in how we innovate. What kind of wild inventions do you think could come out of this dream team scenario?
Oh man, Simon, imagine if these guys teamed up to tackle things like climate change or renewable energy. We could have solar panels as thin as wallpaper or cars that are powered by air. The possibilities would be endless with those minds melding together. What's the craziest collaboration you'd love to see?
Ah, Joe, what a wild thought, buddy. I'm just picturing all these tech wizards slamming their heads together on something like brain-computer interfaces. Imagine controlling your house just by thinking about it. Lights on, coffee brewing, all with just a brainwave. But seriously, combining their powerhouse brains could actually crack some of those hard nuts we've been chewing on for decades in medicine or global connectivity. Could you imagine the leaps we'd make in areas like mental health treatment or creating super smart cities? It's like sci-fi but real. What about you, Joe? What's one area you really think could benefit from this kind of mega collaboration?
Simon, diving into areas like brain-computer interfaces and smart cities screams need for major collaboration. Take brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, historically sparked by research in the late 20th century. These tools have potential in medical fields like neurorehabilitation and mental health. BCIs could radically change how we treat conditions like PTSD or severe depression by essentially rewiring brain activity. Then there's urban tech, man. Smart cities utilize data and tech to upgrade infrastructures, traffic systems that adapt in real time to changes, environmental monitoring that can drastically improve living conditions, or even public safety enhancements with predictive policing tools. Imagine unleashing the tech titans' resources and intellectual capital on these fronts without them getting tangled up in patent wars. By focusing more on cooperation rather than litigation, advancements in these sectors could accelerate tremendously, providing solutions to urban and healthcare challenges much faster. All about pushing the boundaries of what's possible, right? What's your take on flipping from competition to cooperative innovation in these high-stakes areas?
Joe, you're painting a pretty ideal picture there. A utopia where everyone plays nice and chips in. But let's not toss the baby out with the bathwater. Competition, it drives innovation too, right? There's something to be said about the push companies feel to outdo each other. That's been the heartbeat of tech progress for ages. Look at some historical patent wars, like the famous battle between Apple and Samsung. While they were duking it out, both companies were literally racing to crank out better gadgets year after year. That kind of pressure cooker environment sometimes brings out the best tech breakthroughs we've seen. So flipping entirely to cooperation might dull that edge of urgency that has historically pushed boundaries. Sometimes you need a bit of that competitive spark to fire up the engines of invention, you know? What's your angle on keeping that competitive spirit alive in this cooperative dream scenario?
Simon, that's a solid point. You're talking about keeping the fire alive. How do we stir up that heat while still playing on the same team, right? Got me thinking, what if there's an annual innovation challenge? Pit teams against each other in a friendly but fierce tech showdown where they duke it out with their latest advancements. Like a tech Olympics. Keeps the competitive spirit crackling and pushes the envelope on what's possible. What do you think? A perfect blend or just wishful thinking?
Oh, Joe, Tech Olympics? Now you're talking my language. That's like turning competition into sport, real edge of your seat stuff. I love that idea. It keeps the thrill in the game while pooling all that brain power for good. A high-tech melee where everyone still wins somehow. All right, diving right in.
Man, Simon, that's exactly it. It's like MMA for tech geniuses. Everyone's in the ring showing their best moves, pushing each other to the limit, but at the end of the day, it's all for elevating the game. It shakes up the old playbook and spills out something entirely new. This could be the spark that lights up a whole new era of innovation.
Joe, speaking of shaking up the old playbook, it kind of sparks a thought about all those not-so-famous inventors, right? Those guys who had brilliant ideas but never made it to the Tech Hall of Fame because they were overshadowed by the big names. It's wild to think what could have been if their inventions got the spotlight. Like imagine this dude, right, who came up with a game-changing tech decades ago, something that could have maybe sped up our progress in renewables or computing, but he just got sidelined. These are the minds that might have dramatically shifted our tech landscape. What kind of impact do you think recognizing these underdog inventors would have had on our world today, huh?
Simon, it's almost heartbreaking, man. Thinking about all those incredible minds that just never got their moment in the sun because they were outshined by the larger-than-life tech giants. It's like a treasure trove of game-changing ideas we might have missed out on. If these unsung heroes had been recognized, right? Who knows how far ahead we'd be in solving big problems like climate change or global health issues. Their overlooked innovations could have leapfrogged us into new realities sooner. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many brilliant ideas are still hidden away, just waiting for a chance to change the world? What do you think, man? Are there ways we can start uncovering and supporting these hidden geniuses now?
Yeah, Joe, it's a mind bender for sure. But here's the rub. How do we even start peeling back layers on these forgotten geniuses? I mean, the tech world's kind of a juggernaut, right? Barreling forward without looking back much. Maybe what we need is a dedicated platform or initiative that digs into the archives, unearths these lost inventions and gives them a modern-day test drive. Could be sort of like a tech archaeology hunt. Then there's the whole angle of current innovators who might be wallflowers today, but could be game changers tomorrow. Maybe setting up something akin to those crowdfunding sites, but specifically for tech underdogs. Give them a stage to pitch their innovations directly to the public and catch some eyes. Get some grassroots support boiling. At least that way, we're not just waiting around hoping they get noticed by the big players. Really, Joe, it feels like if we can democratize how innovations rise to the top, rather than leaving it to chance or corporate muscle, maybe, just maybe, we'll catch more of these potential breakthroughs before they slip through the cracks. What do you think about turning tech discovery democratic, man?
You're hitting a home run with that idea, Simon. It's like turning the whole tech sector into a giant talent show where the audience gets to vote, not just the big wig judges. Could really shake things up and bring some hidden geniuses into the spotlight. Let's chew on which innovations or sectors might benefit most from this kind of democratic discovery. What's on your mind for that?
Joe, if we're talking democratic tech scouting, I'm throwing my bet on clean energy and environmental tech. Like, let's crowdsource the heck out of those areas. Imagine finding the next whiz kid working out of a garage who figures out how to zap pollution or something. That's the golden ticket society needs right now, man. What sectors are you eyeing?
Simon, you're absolutely spot on with the clean energy push, man. That's crucial. But let me add healthcare tech to the mix, too. Like, think about it. There has to be dozens of sharp minds tinkering away on the next big thing in medical devices or biotech solutions that could revolutionize how we treat diseases or manage health day to day. By spotlighting folks working in these areas through democratic platforms, we could expedite advancements just due to sheer visibility and support. Give those under-the-radar inventors a real shot at making an impact. It's not just about finding them, but actively propelling their projects forward, making sure their genius doesn't just fade into obscurity, right? What's your take on boosting these less visible sectors, Simon?
Joe, healthcare's a no-brainer. Absolutely. Like, there's massive potential just sitting and waiting in those minds, working in the shadows. But swinging back to your point on getting these ideas out there, right? It's kind of like tossing them into the gladiator arena and seeing who survives. It's fierce, sure, but also might risk the smaller tech getting squashed before they even have a chance. And like, switching gears a bit, have you ever dived into the craziness of trademark wars in tech? Talk about a gladiator battle. These clashes over branding are like, they're epic sagas in their own right that can make or break companies. Those fights define who gets to be king of the hill in consumer minds. You know what I mean? So imagine if some genius inventor comes up with a swell idea but steps on the toes of a big company's trademark. Even unknowingly, he could get wiped out before even getting off the ground. It's wild how intellectual property battles shape whole industries, man. Like, what do you think about this whole zoo of trademark wars impacting innovation visibility and progress?
Oh, trademark wars, Simon. They're a total minefield. Seriously, they can be as stifling as they are protective, right? That drama doesn't just affect giants. Those smaller innovators navigating this battlefield, man, they could use some shield of their own. It's the kind of chaos that might keep a brilliant idea from ever seeing light. It's clear we've got layers to peel back on these not-so-famous inventors and the barriers they face. There's so much more under the surface about these unsung heroes and the battles they fight, don't you think? Want to take a deeper dive next time?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Peeling back the curtain on these trademark tussles sounds like a thrill ride. It's like detective work, uncovering how these branding battles shape not just businesses, but whole markets, and what we end up with on our shelves. Let's dig into that next time.
Definitely, Simon. Trademark wars, man, they're like these epic showdowns hidden beneath the glossy exterior of corporate branding. It's kind of wild how a simple logo or tagline can become the center of such fierce battles, right? These fights aren't just lawyer fodder, they actually shape what we as consumers see and choose from. gets you thinking about what's really behind that brand name we're so loyal to. Next time, we'll have to crack open why these trademarks are such hot commodities and the crazy lengths companies will go to protect them. Sounds like a plan?
Yeah, Joe, totally a plan. It's kind of like these companies are throwing down in a royal rumble for the crown of consumer recognition. Makes you wonder, though, how many of these fights are really about innovation versus just hogging the marketplace. Do you think these battles actually encourage better products or just stifle creativity under legal weight? What's your take on that, man?
Simon, it's a real toss-up. On one hand, trademark rights are crucial because they allow companies to protect their brand and guarantee that when we buy something, it's the quality we expect from that name. But then on the flip side, if we're talking about stifling creativity, yeah, these legal battles can totally throw cold water on innovation. It's like instead of pushing the envelope on new ideas, companies might play it safe, guarding what they've already got. So while trademarks are key for business identity and consumer trust, there's always this shadow of whether they're also barriers keeping smaller, innovative players at bay. It's kind of double-edged, don't you think? What angle do you want to dive into next on this?
Yeah, Joe, double-edged for sure. It's kind of like every trademark is a mini fortress, right? Protecting, but maybe also isolating. If we flip the lens, think about small startups trying to break into a market that's just littered with these legal landmines. It's like navigating a minefield. And here's a twist. What if in this heavyweight clash, there was more transparency or simpler guidelines about what really needs trademark protection versus what doesn't? Maybe it could ease up on the throttle of those who are just trying to swing at the big leagues without crossing lines. So yeah, thinking about how we could make this landscape less of a battleground and more of a breeding ground for all things innovative might be a cool angle to explore next time, huh? What's your take on shaping a fairer playing field in these trademark wars, Joe?
For those just tuning in, we're diving deep into the world of trademark wars, right? It's like unraveling why these branding battles are more than just legal scuffles. They shake up whole industries. Think about it. Every trademark is a mini fortress, kind of protecting but maybe also isolating, huh? We chatted about how big companies use these trademarks to keep their brands safe, ensuring that when we pick something off a shelf, it's what we expect, genuine stuff. But there's this other side where sometimes all this legal muscle might stifle innovation, especially for the small guys trying to break through. And Simon here tossed in a sweet twist. What if things were clearer, like simpler rules on what needs protection and what doesn't? Could make the whole scene less of a battleground, more of a breeding ground for cool new stuff. So, yeah, we're thinking about ways to level the playing field here, making it fairer so everyone can innovate without tiptoeing around too much. That's what's on the table today. What do you think, Simon? Any other angles you want to peek at in this whole trademark tangle?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. And here's a zinger. Imagine if trademark disputes had like a reality show where inventors pitch why their branding deserves a chance. The drama, the intrigue. It'd make the whole process a spectacle, but might just shed some light on how wild these battles really are. Who wouldn't watch that, right?
Oh, Simon, that's gold. A reality show style courtroom for trademarks? That would be must-see TV. Watching businesses duke it out over names and logos could really give everyone a front row seat to the tension and tactics in trademark wars. Could even change public perception on what's fair game in branding battles.
Yeah, Joe, totally. And speaking of branding battles, man, have you ever dug into the whole Apple Core versus Apple Inc. showdown? Like, it's an oldie but a goodie in the trademark tangle arena. So get this. The Beatles had their company, Apple Corps, right? And then Steve Jobs comes along with Apple Computer. Bam! You've got a recipe for confusion because they're both rocking the Apple name, but in totally different lanes. And here's where it gets juicier. The fight wasn't just a one and done. It stretched over decades with multiple lawsuits. Think about that. It really set some wild precedents on how far-reaching a trademark can be, depending on the industry context. Man, thinking about it, doesn't that kind of legal epic just reshape how we even look at trademarks across industries today? What's your vibe on that, Joe? How do companies navigate these waters without stepping on each other's toes while still being innovative?
For everyone just tuning in, we're diving into a classic case from the trademark history books. The battle over the Apple name between Apple Corps, that's the Beatles record company, and Apple Inc., the tech giant founded by Steve Jobs. So here's the deal. Both companies popped up around the same era, but sailed in totally different industry waters. One in music, the other in computers. This sparked some major confusion and legal clashes about who really had the rights to use the Apple brand. And it wasn't just a quick skirmish. This thing dragged out for years with multiple lawsuits. It was kind of like watching a tennis match where the ball kept zooming back and forth over the net. Each lawsuit kind of nudged the boundaries on what trademarks mean, depending on your market niche. Now, thinking about today's impact, man, this whole saga really reshaped how companies view trademarks across different industries. Makes you wonder, how businesses can keep innovating without tripping over someone else's intellectual property, right? So what's your take, Simon? How should companies tread these tricky waters?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like every company has to tiptoe through a minefield in stilettos, super tricky and high stakes. They've got to innovate without accidentally stepping on the trademarks that came before them. Wild stuff, right? What a dance.
Right, Simon? It's like a high wire act up there, trying to balance between unique innovation and not tumbling into a legal abyss. Every step has to be calculated but daring at the same time. Just adds an extra layer of thrill or terror for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, Joe. It's like watching those tightrope walkers, right? They've got to be spot on with every step, or down they go. So, I got to wonder, do you think this kind of pressure cooker environment makes for better brands in the end, or just more fearful ones tiptoeing around innovation? What's your angle on that, buddy?
That's a cracking question, Simon. So I think it's a bit of both, right? On one hand, this pressure from potential trademark disputes, it pushes companies to really hone in on what makes their brand unique. It drives them to differentiate, to innovate in ways they maybe wouldn't have if the path was just wide open. But then, there's the flip side. Too much fear of stepping into a legal minefield could definitely stifle creativity. Some might play it too safe, missing out on big leaps forward to avoid conflict. Like in the case with Apple Corps and Apple Inc., it's interesting because instead of backing down, they both just seem to push harder on their distinct paths. And look where that got them, iconic status in their fields. So, yeah, man, it's about finding that balance between caution and courage in the branding race. What's your take, buddy? How do you see businesses navigating these waters without getting paralyzed by fear?
Oh, for sure, Joe. It's like navigating a minefield. You've got to be bold but not reckless, right? Thinking about the Apple boys, both Core and Inc., they could have just settled into comfy corners of their industries, avoiding the overlap. But nah, they pushed boundaries, man. Jobs with his tech revolution and the Beatles shaping music history. In that sense, tradition didn't just handcuff them, it sparked something fiercer. And that's fascinating because it turns the whole idea of fear in business on its head, right? So, yeah, companies today might look at this and think, okay, yes, there's risk, but there's also massive reward in pushing the envelope. Just takes figuring out when to gun it and when to ease off the gas. You know? What do you think pushes a company to make that leap despite the risks, Joe?
You hit the nail on the head there, Simon. Taking that bold leap, despite the risks, it's about seeing potential where others might just see peril, right? With the Apple saga as our backdrop, it's like these guys, Jobs and the Beatles, they saw the bigger picture beyond the immediate trademark tussles. They were driven by a vision for what their Apple could become, which was more than just a name, it became a whole identity. This identity was rooted not just in the products or music, but in the culture they were building around their brands. Innovation was their lead foot, man. And what really pushes a company to make that leap? It's usually a mix of clear vision, strong leadership, and a good dose of calculated risk-taking. They don't just see barriers, they see through them to what's possible on the other side. Making those decisions, that's the art and science of business. So when companies today face similar crossroads, thinking big and bold, like how Apple Inc. expanded into music with iTunes, stepping right back into overlap with Apple Core, it's proof that embracing risks can redefine your space in history. What do you think keeps current leaders inspired by these kinds of stories, Simon?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like they're not just playing checkers, it's 3D chess with a side of poker. Keeps you on your toes and always guessing what's the next big move.
Absolutely, Simon. It's that strategic game that keeps the business world so riveting. Speaking of keeping things interesting and a bit lighthearted, have you ever delved into some of those laughable logo lawsuits? You know, where companies clash over symbols that seem super simple or just plain odd to be fighting over? Like, sometimes you look at these cases and it's more like watching a comedy show than a courtroom drama.
Oh, man, Joe, talk about a comedy goldmine. Like there was this time when two companies went head to head over a logo that was basically just a single geometric shape. Imagine duking it out in court over who gets to use a triangle or a square. Feels more like kindergarten than a legal battle. And get this, there was another case where a fast food joint got into a beef with a tech startup over a logo featuring arrows. Both logos were so abstract, I bet if you squinted, they'd look like doodles from someone's phone call scribbles. It's hilarious sometimes because you've got to wonder if these folks have too much time and money on their hands, right? Battling over logos that, frankly, most of us wouldn't even blink twice at. Makes me think these companies are maybe just flexing their muscles, like showing off who can shout the loudest over the smallest things. What do you think sparks these wild logo wars, Joe?
Oh man, Simon, those examples are just golden. It's like everyone's trying to stake their claim on the most basic elements, right? Makes you think they're in it more for the show than any real substance. These logo wars, they sometimes look more like a playground spat than serious business strategy. And about why these battles kick off, I think it's partly about territory, like dogs marking their spots, you know? Companies lay claim to a shape or color, so when anyone even remotely steps close, bam, they pounce. It's a mix of protecting turf and maybe just some good old corporate ego flexing. What do you reckon? Does flexing in these fights portray strength, or does it kind of turn into an expensive joke?
Joe, it's like watching a heavyweight bout over who gets the last slice of pizza. Sometimes it's hard to tell if they're serious or just putting on a show, right? I lean towards thinking it turns into a bit of an expensive joke. Like, honestly, when two companies throw down legal fees over something as small as a color or squiggle, it kind of seems, how do I put this nicely? Overkill? And think about this. Does the average Joe, no pun intended, really care if one blue rectangle is slightly lighter than another? Probably not. They're more about what the company does for them rather than what squiggles and circles make up their logo, right? So, yeah, it feels a bit like these corporate giants might be flexing just to show off their muscles rather than doing anything super meaningful for their brand. But then again, maybe there's a method to the madness. Like, these fights could scare off others from even thinking about stepping near their visual identity turf. It sets a precedent, kind of screams, back off, buddy. This insignificant speckle is mine. What's your take, Joe? Do you see any legit strategy in these logo tiffs, or is it all just corporate chest thumping?
Oh, Simon, you've nailed it. It's like a high stakes game of Monopoly, but with logos and trademarks. Sure, it can look like an expensive circus act at times, but there's strategy in the spectacle, right? It's all about setting boundaries that scream, this visual playground is mine. Keeps things spicy in the business world. What's one of the craziest logo disputes you've come across?
Oh, speaking of crazy, Joe, there was this wild case where a coffee shop got sued by a major film studio because their logo kinda resembled the studio's emblem on like a bad hair day. Can you imagine? A coffee place and a mega movie maker duking it out. Grab your popcorn for that episode.
Oh man, Simon, that's like peak absurdity right there. A coffee shop and a mega movie studio. It's like comparing apples to, I don't know, monster trucks, totally out of whack scales. But hey, guess it keeps the lawyers in business, right? So what do you think drives these giants to take on the little guys over something as subtle as a logo tweak? Is it really all about the brand, or is there another angle we're missing here?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like these big guns maybe see themselves as the guardians of their niche, right? Whenever they spot anything, like even remotely infringing, they swoop in. It's not just about a logo, it's about setting an example, showing they're tough on any overlap, no matter how small. And get this, sometimes it's not even about the actual threat, but the fear factor. Like, hey, don't even think about stepping into our visual or thematic space. It sends a message to other potential boundary pushers. So, yeah, while it seems laughably petty on the surface, there's a layer of strategic intimidation at play, too. Kind of keeps everyone checking over their shoulder before they sketch out their next logo, huh?
Uh, yeah, Simon, that intimidation game is strong, but man, at what cost? It's like, where do you draw the line between protecting your turf and just swinging at every shadow? You got to wonder if all the legal muscle flexing might actually stifle some creativity out there. Like, think about a small startup trying to make a splash with a cool logo. Suddenly, they're getting slapped with a lawsuit because their squiggle was slightly too squiggly in the wrong direction. Kind of makes you think, are we fostering innovation or just creating a culture of fear? So, do you reckon there's a better way these big companies could handle potential logo conflicts without scaring off the little guys? Maybe there's a middle ground we're not seeing here. What's your take on this, Simon?
Hey, if you're just tuning in, me and Joe have been diving into the sometimes hilarious world of logo lawsuits. It's like imagine two companies going toe to toe over a simple squiggle or color shade. Kind of makes you scratch your head, right? We chatted about how these battles, like big film studios suing little coffee shops over vaguely similar logos, are more about putting on a show of strength, setting boundaries that scream, "This is mine." And it's not just about protecting their brand, but also kind of scaring others from even getting close to their design turf. So while it gets a bit absurd at times, there's a serious side too, where these logo spats can stifle creativity and maybe even intimidate smaller players in the industry. Makes us wonder if there's a better way to handle these disputes without quashing innovation. That's been our quirky topic today: corporate crises over curious symbols.
Absolutely, Simon. It's like a never-ending drama series, all about who drew what line where. Makes you think twice about doodles, huh?
You know, Joe, it's funny we're hashing out who owns a squiggle or shade because it opens up this even crazier can of worms about trademarking pieces of culture itself. Like, imagine companies trying to own traditional cultural symbols through trademarks. That's another level of tricky, right? What do you think about diving into that swamp?
Definitely, Simon. Trademarking cultural symbols. That's like a huge can of ethical worms. You've got these massive entities claiming ownership over stuff that's deeply rooted in history and tradition. It's so complex because on one hand, you want to protect the heritage, but on the other, there's this drive for commercial rights. How do you reckon we balance that out? What's the line between cultural protection and like outright appropriation in trademarks?
Joe, that's like asking to juggle flaming torches without getting burned, man. It's super sticky because where do you draw the line? You've got these cases, right, where businesses trademark indigenous words or symbols, and it kind of feels like they're just cashing in on someone else's cultural pocket. It's like definitely not playing nice in the sandbox. But then I guess some folks argue they're helping promote the culture, bring it into the spotlight. Seems kind of off to me, like saying you're helping by taking away doesn't click, right? Creating a balance surely isn't about owning pieces of a culture for profit. Shouldn't it be more about respect and mutual benefits instead of locking down rights to traditions that aren't even yours to sell?
Yeah, Simon, that's hitting the nail on the head. Using someone else's cultural symbols for profit is like trying to claim the ocean because you put a flag on the beach. Not cool, not fair. It's about respect, man. should be a dialogue, not a monologue, working with those communities, not just exploiting them for a quick buck. What's crucial here is that balance and real collaboration, not just slapping a trademark on it and calling it a day.
Absolutely, Joe. And let's not forget some of the heavyweight discussions happening globally about this stuff. Like, take New Zealand, for example. There's been a significant push to ensure that Maori cultural elements aren't just up for grabs in trademarks. They've set systems to review these kinds of trademark applications critically, asking key questions about cultural significance and the applicant's connection to the Maori community. Or consider the Navajo Nation in the US. They've had big tussles with major brands trying to use their name and patterns without permission. It led them to aggressively pursue legal protections to keep their cultural symbols from turning into just another product line without tying back to the tribe or benefiting them. What we're seeing is more communities and countries calling for a clearer understanding and respect for cultural heritage. These movements underscore that it's not just about legal ownership, but ethical practice and real partnership with those whose culture is being tapped into. This whole conversation blazes a trail for deeper dialogues on not just owning, but honoring cultural identities in business practices. What's your pulse on this, Joe? How far do you think this could go?
Oh, totally, Simon. This could spark a global shift in how we handle cultural heritage, a move towards ethical mindfulness over mere market monopoly. Imagine if this became the norm worldwide. That would be a game changer for sure.
Yeah, Joe, you're spot on. A global shift. Now that sounds like a dream worth pushing for, right? Imagine businesses worldwide just jumping in, adopting this mindful approach. It'd flip the script entirely. Makes you wonder, though, how many are ready to take that leap? And what's it going to take to get everyone on board? What do you think?
That's the million-dollar question, Simon. It's like getting everyone on board. That's a tough one. Businesses, big and small, they've got to see beyond the immediate cash grab. It's about long-term gains, right? Not just in profits, but in relationships and reputation. Shifting that mindset, man, it requires massive awareness and probably some hefty incentives. You've got to wonder how many are ready to really rethink their strategies, like genuinely commit to this change rather than just put on a nice PR front. Maybe implementing stricter laws or global standards could push them. But then again, it's not just about imposing rules. It's about cultivating a genuine understanding and respect for these cultural roots. So yeah, convincing every player in the game, I mean, it feels like trying to steer a giant ship with a canoe paddle. Possible? Sure. Easy? Definitely not. What's your take on making this happen? Simon, how do we get the wheels turning here?
Uh, Steering that giant ship with a tiny paddle, huh? It's like tackling a marathon in flip-flops. Doable, but dang tricky. The key might be starting small, building momentum. Little shifts make big waves, right? If every company does one small thing to respect and engage authentically with cultural heritage, maybe we start seeing change on a grand scale. Gotta wonder how many are willing to take that first step. What do you think would push them to move, Joe?
You know, Simon, speaking of brands and their control over images and symbols, that takes us right into the wild world of brand parodies. It's like a tightrope walk between humor and legality, right? How does a cheeky spoof stand in the shadow of these massive corporate trademarks without tipping over into infringement? It's a fascinating dance to dissect. What's your initial take on this, Simon?
Uh, totally, Joe. Navigating that tightrope between a laugh and a lawsuit, it's like, where do you draw the line, right? So, in the legal jungle, they've got this thing called fair use, kind of like a safety net for parodists. It's all about, balancing the act of poking fun without crossing into outright copying. Take Louis Vuitton v. Hot Diggity Dog, for instance. Classic showdown where you've got high-end fashion being riffed on by plush dog toys. The court said that was cool because it was clearly a joke, not trying to fool anyone into thinking it's the real Lux deal. Shows that while you can dish out humor, you gotta make sure it's served up clearly as parody, not as a knockoff. What are your thoughts on finding that sweet spot, Joe?
Well, Simon, on the flip side, some folks argue that even if it's all in good fun, Parodies can blur lines. Like, think about brand reputation, right? A parody, even a clear-cut joke, might muddle public perception or dilute the prestige of a high-end brand like Louis Vuitton. It's not just about avoiding confusion over the source. It's also about how these parodies could potentially undermine the original brand's value. And then there's the economic argument. Uh, Companies spend a ton building and protecting their brand image. If a parody is too close to home, it could piggyback off that hard-earned image, impacting potential revenues. What do you make of this angle, Simon? How do we weigh the freedom of expression against protecting what brands have legitimately built?
Yeah, Joe, that's a solid point you're hitting on. Like, there's this genuine concern for brands feeling the pinch from these parodies, right? They drop heaps of cash to build up a rep, and then bam, a parody could throw shade on all that effort. It gets me thinking, where do we plunk down the marker between good-hearted fun and stepping on someone's hard work? It's tough, because freedom of speech is huge, but, shouldn't that come with respect for what others have built up? So, how do you see us balancing these two heavyweights, protecting creative expression in parodies versus safeguarding the investments brands make in their image? What's your angle on making both ends meet without stepping on too many toes?
Yeah, Simon, balancing these two is like trying to mix oil and water sometimes. My take, it's all about intention and execution. If a parody's making a clear-cut commentary or poking fun in a way that's obvious and not just riding the brand's coattails for a free marketing boost, that should weigh heavily in its favor. The key might be in establishing clearer guidelines, sort of a playbook on what crosses the line and what's playing fair. By doing this, both creators and brands know where they stand, minimizing conflicts and respecting boundaries. Freedom of speech is crucial, but yeah, it shouldn't steamroll the genuine efforts and investments of others. What about some sort of mediation framework before things hit the courts? Could that work as a middle ground, Simon?
Uh, Definitely, Joe. Mediation? That could totally be a game changer, like having a referee before the gloves come off in court, right? It's like this chilled out space where both parties can hash things out more informally. It gives parodists and brands a shot to see eye to eye, or at least find some common ground without turning it all legal showdown. This kind of approach could save everyone a ton of time, dough, and drama. It's about setting the stage for clearer understandings, ensuring everyone plays by rules that consider both creative freedom and respect for brand integrity. Maybe it sounds a bit idealistic, but hey, finding harmonious ways forward in these tricky territories is crucial. So, Joe, do you think other areas could benefit from this sort of approach too?
Totally, Simon. Actually reminds me of this time I was at a comedy show, right? The comedian was riffing on popular brands, just threading that needle between humor and offense. It was hilarious, but also super sharp, really made you think about where that line is. So after the show, there's this Q&A, and someone asked him about the risks of using real brands in his act. And he said something that stuck with me. He mentioned how it's all about the approach, being clever, not cruel. Basically, putting in the work to make sure it's clear he's making a point, not just poking fun for the heck of it. It's kind of like what we're discussing. This idea of mediation and finding balance isn't just for courtrooms or legal battles. It's also crucial in creative fields like comedy or art, ensuring that freedom doesn't trample on respect. Kind of shows, how wide-reaching these issues are and how various fields can learn from each other in managing these dynamics. What do you think about pulling lessons from different areas like this, Simon? Could that help widen understanding and maybe ease tensions a bit?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's like everyone's playing the same game, but with different rule books. Tapping into how different fields handle similar issues, that's pure gold. It could spark some really innovative solutions, blending the best strategies from everywhere. Imagine a mashup of comedy improv rules with legal strategies or art critiques. Now, that'd make handling these tricky situations way more dynamic and maybe even a bit fun, right?
Man, Simon, that's a killer idea. Cross-pollinating strategies like that could turn the whole conversation on its head. It'd definitely keep things from going stale. What's the next step? How do we start integrating these out-of-the-box ideas into more traditional frameworks?
Right, Joe. Integrating these wild ideas, it's kind of like herding cats. Tricky, but not impossible. The real deal might start with open forums or think tanks where creatives and executives can riff off each other's experiences, maybe mixing in some workshops or panel discussions at major industry events, getting those legal minds mashed up with creative gurus. This isn't just about throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's about crafting a recipe that everyone can digest. Super important, though, is keeping the essence won't get lost, you know? The essence of creativity and legality, not just shadowboxing, but actually tag teaming it. What do you think, Joe? Is there a way to pilot this without getting too bogged down by the usual red tape?
Absolutely, Simon. Starting small with those forums or pilot programs sounds like a smart move, kind of a test run without getting tangled up in too much bureaucracy right off the bat. It lets us see what really works and refine as we go. Really, it's all about keeping that line of dialogue open and vibrant, huh? Anyway, diving deep into these crossover strategies could definitely shake things up for the better. What's next on your mind, Simon? Any new topics we should toss around?
You know, Joe, speaking of creative expression and lawsuits, it reminds me of that wild saga between Mattel and the band Aqua over the song Barbie Girl. Classic example of when parody clashes with trademarks. Got any thoughts on that one, Joe?
Oh yeah, that case was a total circus, Simon. You've got Mattel, right? They're all fired up, claiming Aqua damaged the Barbie brand's wholesome image with their cheeky lyrics. But then Aqua punches back, saying it's just parody, all in good fun and under creative expression. The court landing on Aqua's side by citing free speech. It kind of set the stage for how we handle parody today. It showed that even big brands can be fair game for satire, as long as it's clear and doesn't confuse folks about who's behind the product. Really makes you think about where we draw the line between harm and humor, huh? What's your take on using such high-profile cases to define these boundaries?
Yeah, Joe. It's like walking a tightrope, huh? These high-profile cases, they really spotlight the clash between protecting your brand and, keeping a sense of humor about things. It's all about striking that balance. But this ruling, it didn't just set legal precedents. It kind of opened up a can of worms for creatives and corporates alike to think deeply about the impact of their work on popular culture. How do you reckon corporations might have changed their approach post Barbie versus Aqua? Maybe loosened up a bit or doubled down on safeguarding their image?
Absolutely, Simon. Post that Barbie versus Aqua clash, I think corporations have had to really refine their approach to dealing with parodies. They're kind of walking a fine line. On one hand, they want to protect their brand and ensure it's not misrepresented or devalued. But on the other, being too aggressive against parodists can paint them as humorless big bads out to squash creative freedom. Let's add some spice here. After this case, Mattel even adopted a lighter approach for a time, using the song Barbie Girl in an advertisement back in 2009 under specific terms agreed with Universal Music and Aqua, a significant shift from its earlier stance during the lawsuit. This almost seems like both sides eventually realized that there's mutual benefit in coexisting, understanding the importance of satire in modern culture while still maintaining brand integrity. Makes me wonder, could this be a template for others? How do brands now navigate similar waters without causing a PR nightmare?
Yeah, Joe. Diving a bit deeper into that whole shift in strategy by Mattel, it sort of represents how companies started seeing the value in embracing satire instead of just throwing lawsuits around. After the whole Barbie versus Aqua dust-up, Mattel's move to use the song showed a savvy awareness of changing public perceptions. It's like, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em, right? They turned what was a PR blunder into something playful and self-aware, kind of showcasing a more human side of the brand. This approach not only cools off potential conflicts, but could actually boost their image and connect with broader audiences who appreciate a sense of humor. So, it makes you think, if other brands took this page out of Mattel's playbook, acknowledging parodies as part of modern dialogue rather than threats, Could lead to less legal drama and more creative collaborations, huh? What about you, Joe? Seen any other juicy instances where brands made a 180 turn after facing similar issues?
Absolutely, Simon. Like Nike flipped the script after those satire ads by embracing the creators. Instead of legal sprawls, they often engage in playful banter or partnerships that show their sports, not just about making bucks, but also about being part of the cultural convo. It's savvy, considering the meme era we're living in. Missing that beat could make a brand look outdated real quick. Makes you wonder, what's the next big parody clash we'll see, and how will they handle it?
Oh man, Joe, it's like waiting for the next season of your favorite show, huh? You just know something juicy's gonna drop, and all eyes will be on how they handle the heat. Will they throw punches or throw a party? Either way, I'm grabbing the popcorn. What kind of wild parody showdown do you think is up next in the lineup?
Simon, while embracing parodies sounds hip and all, there's still a strong case for brands to defend their trademarks aggressively. Look at it this way. Trademarks are not just logos or slogans. They're the very identity of a brand, built over decades with like tons of investment in marketing and trust building. When a parody crosses into murky waters, maybe misleading consumers or tarnishing a brand's image, it's more than just fun and games. It can cause real confusion and potential loss of brand value. Like imagine smaller brands that don't have the clout or the financial backing of a giant like Mattel. For them, being vigilant against any misuse can mean the difference between thriving or barely surviving in a super competitive market. So yeah, while we cheers to creativity, we can't forget the importance of protecting what essentially defines a brand. What do you reckon? Simon? Is there maybe a line that shouldn't be crossed even in the name of satire?
Yeah, folks. So for those just tuning in, we're chatting about that classic legal tussle between Mattel and the band Aqua over the song Barbie Girl. It's a real slice of pop culture pie that put the whole idea of parody and brand protection under the microscope. Basically, Mattel wasn't thrilled with how their beloved Barbie was portrayed and claimed it was bad news for Barbie's image. But on the flip side, Aqua defended the tune as a harmless, parodic expression, just poking fun in creative ways without meaning any harm. The courts ended up ruling in favor of Aqua, citing free speech, which really set a precedent for how we handle parodies today. It sparked tons of discussions, like ours, right? About where you draw the line between humor and harm and respecting creativity while protecting what a brand stands for. So Joe and I have been hashing it out, balancing creative freedom with not stepping on toes, or trademarks, if you will. Boy, it's a doozy of a topic, but super important in staying sharp in today's fast-moving, meme-heavy world. What's your take on this epic saga?
No kidding, Simon, and you've got to wonder, with social media being the wild west of memes and parodies, how many more of these Barbie girl showdowns are we going to see? It's like every brand is one viral tweet away from being the next meme star or lawsuit headliner. What a tightrope to walk, huh?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. And speaking of brands becoming meme stars, it's hilarious when businesses themselves play along or become cheeky with parodies. It keeps things light and funny while showing they can take a joke. How about we lighten the mood further by diving into some of the most hilarious brand parodies out there? I bet our listeners could use a good laugh right now.
Oh, that's a killer idea, Simon. Remember that time McDonald's logo got flipped to WC Donald's in a popular anime? It was a clever nod without stepping on any legal toes. Totally permissible, and frankly, hilarious. Then there's the classic Dumb Starbucks episode where they mirrored every detail of the famous coffee chain but added dumb. That sparked quite the debate on parody versus infringement before it was revealed as a comedy stunt. And we can't forget about the fake ads for Board burgers instead of Ford trucks. Completely over the top, but caught everyone's funny bone while cruising just under that lawsuit radar. These parodies not only give us a good chuckle, but also make us think about the creative lines drawn in the corporate sand. What do you think, Simon? Which one cracks you up the most?
Oh, Joe, the WC Donald's bit absolutely cracks me up every time. It's like Clever enough to get a giggle without making McDonald's run for their lawyers, right? But on that note about dumb Starbucks, man, that one pushed it way over the edge. While it was hilarious, like who comes up with this stuff, it totally blurred those lines between parody and potential infringement. It's crazy how these stunts pull massive attention. Like, they start as a joke, but can spiral into these huge discussions on legality and creative freedom. Honestly, Joe, it makes you wonder if some of these are just brilliant marketing moves dressed up as parodies, huh? So which other hilarious brand knockoffs come to mind that stirred the pot but kept us laughing?
Oh man, Simon, you hit the nail on the head there. It's like these parodies are walking right up to the edge of what's legal and just kind of poking it, seeing how far they can go before someone pushes back. And yeah, some of these are definitely clever marketing. Take the Snike logo, where they barely change the Nike swoosh. It's almost asking for a double take. Honestly, it's genius because it gets people talking, sharing, tweeting, you name it. They turn these little stunts into major conversation pieces. Makes you wonder if controversy is just part of their strategy, like they know exactly what they're doing to get everyone riled up, but still keep things lighthearted enough to avoid big trouble. What do you reckon?
Absolutely, Joe. It's like they're playing chess with public perception, making bold moves, but always staying just one step ahead of the checkmate. These brands practically weaponize humor to shake up the norm and keep us all on our toes. Makes you think, huh? What's the next big parody gonna be, and who's daring enough to pull it off?
Oh, totally, Simon. It's like brands are just itching to jump into the parody arena. Consider Oreo phone instead of iPhone. It grabs attention and spreads like wildfire on social media. Historically, brand parodies have tread a fine line between homage and critique. Think about Adidogs for Adidas. Lighthearted, poking fun at dog lovers, but still close enough that it draws a second glance and maybe even a smile from the execs. And look at brands like Google, renowned for their April Fool's Day antics, turning all serious tech talk into a day of laughter. What they're doing is mixing humor with marketing, showing us they can laugh at themselves. It breaks down barriers between consumer and corporation, making those brands seem more relatable. What's next, right? Maybe we'll see Tesla turn into Tesla with electric jokes instead of cars. Who's got the guts to take a swing at that?
Oh, Joe, that Tesla idea? Man, that'd be gold. But, you know what gets me thinking? Sometimes these parodies, while we laugh, they sort of skate on thin ice. Like, where's the line, right? For every Adidogs that gets a chuckle, there might be a brand knocking at the door of a lawsuit. It's like, how do they keep it funny without stepping too far and turning the laugh into a legal headache? And speaking of pushing boundaries, think about all those parody commercials people whip up for video platforms. Some are just downright genius, so close to the real thing, but with a twist that makes you go, wait a minute, that's not right. It completely flips your view. So, it kind of makes you wonder, Joe, does making fun of something actually give it more power? Do these brands secretly love being parodied because it keeps them relevant? What do you think? Are they laughing all the way to the bank with this stuff?
Oh man, Simon, you're spot on. This reminds me of that time I stumbled upon a fake ad for Pica instead of IKEA, showcasing some ridiculously impossible to assemble furniture. It was hilarious because anyone who's ever bought something from IKEA knows the assembly struggle is real. But here's the kicker. While we were all laughing, it got us talking about IKEA more than usual. Sharing experiences, cracking jokes, and, it sort of cemented IKEA's quirky DIY culture in our minds even deeper. So, in a weird way, the parody didn't just mock. It kind of celebrated their brand identity, making them even more memorable. So yeah, sometimes when these brands get parodied, it's not just a laugh or a potential PR headache waiting to happen. It's free buzz. It's conversation. And as strange as it sounds, it might actually be enhancing their image, making them more a part of our daily chatter. They become, like, culturally ingrained. Crazy how that works, huh?
Absolutely bonkers, Joe. Turns every jokester into an accidental marketing genius. What a wild world where a parody not only entertains, but fuels the fame fire. What's your favorite whoops, we made them more popular parody incident?
You know, Simon, this whole conversation about accidental marketing and the power of parody swings us right into a deeper lane. It's like, on one hand, these stunts bolster the brand dialogue, right? But on the flip side, where do we draw the line between harmless fun and genuine harm to a brand's reputation? This sort of opens up our next thinking spot. Does brand parody actually undermine the value of a brand? Or is it a crucial limb of free speech, letting society chisel out its own cultural narrative? What's your take on this tango between protecting what a company builds and letting the public have their say through humor and satire?
Joe, you're definitely hitting a nerve here with that balance act. On one side of the coin, parodies can make brands look like relatable and human. They join in on the cultural jokes. But flip it over, and you've got this potential nightmare where a joke might go too far, like really dragging a brand through the mud, making people see it in less flattering light. I mean, let's not forget, businesses pour their soul and, oh man, boatloads of cash into creating these polished images. So when a parody strikes, it's not just poking fun, it's poking the bear. It could undermine years of hard work in an instant. Yet, isn't that what free speech is all about? Being able to call out or poke fun at big names without fear. So yeah, the stakes are high, dude. We've got to find a middle ground where creativity isn't shackled by fear of stepping on toes, but brands also aren't left defenseless against potentially damaging spoofs. What do you guys think? Is there a golden rule for this kind of stuff? Or are we all navigating this wacky waters together?
Man, Simon, it's like we're in a cultural Wild West right now with all these brand parodies galloping around. Makes you think, are brands just modern day cowboys trying to wrangle their image on the digital frontier? It's getting wild out there. What do you think, everyone? Are we pushing the boundaries of humor or just pushing buttons?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like the whole Wild West analogy really fits. So, folks, here's a scoop for giving us some grounding on this. Parody laws actually fall under what's called fair use in many places, like in the US, right? That means as long as the parody is transformative enough, it adds new expression or meaning, it's generally seen as legal. It's not just copying, it's creating something new that's meant to comment, criticize, or just make fun. But get this, different countries have different takes. Like in the EU, the standards can be stricter, focusing more on protecting the original creator's rights. So, what might fly as a hilarious and perfectly legal joke in one country could be viewed as infringement somewhere else. Here's the kicker. While these parodies might be all in good humor, they sometimes expose brands to hard truths about their image they maybe didn't see or weren't willing to acknowledge. So this whole parody game, it's not just laughs, it's part watchdog, part entertainer. It challenges brands to stay relevant and responsive to public perception, pushing them to maybe not take themselves so seriously or to reconsider their approach to customer relations. It's an important part of our freedom of speech because it keeps the conversation dynamic, always evolving. Man, it's a true balancing act between humor, criticism, and respect. What do you all think? Are these parodists modern-day heroes, or are they crossing lines left and right?
Absolutely, Simon. It's like these parodists are the unsung heroes of the digital age, armed with humor as their weapon, shaping public discourse under the guise of a laugh. They push brands not to just sit on their laurels, but to engage, react, and sometimes pivot. What do you folks think? Are these jesters holding up a mirror to society, or are they just stirring the pot for kicks?
Oh, Joe, diving deep here. When we look at this from a factual standpoint, the role of parody in society has roots in historical satire and political commentary. Think way back to caricatures in 18th century newspapers poking fun at the aristocracy. It's been a crucial outlet for societal self-reflection and critique. Fast forward to today. With digital platforms, the reach and impact of parody are exponentially greater. According to studies, satirical content online can influence public opinion almost as effectively as traditional news stories. This shows that parody does more than just entertain, it informs and shapes perspectives. Legal-wise, landmark cases like the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Campbell v's A Cuff Rose Music, Inc., which allowed for commercial parodies under fair use, citing transformative use, highlight the importance of parody in maintaining a balanced discourse between copyright protection and freedom of expression. This balance seeks to protect creators while not stifling public dialogue. So is it just stirring the pot, or providing valuable critique under the shield of humor? Factually, it seems to do both, serving as a barometer for public sentiment and pushing brands and our culture at large towards evolution and sometimes meaningful change. What's your view, listeners?
Spot on, Simon. It's like every chuckle has a bit of truth wrapped up in it, turning each parody into a mini revolution for both thoughts and laughs. All right, listeners, weigh in. Where do you stand in this laughter-filled battleground of parody versus brand protection?
You know, Joe, sticking with this theme of humor and branding, it's like there's a whole universe where jokes not only jab at brands, but actually help build them up. Yep, I'm talking about the crazy world of meme marketing, where memes aren't just for laughs, they're strategic tools in the branding arsenal. It's fascinating to see how these quick, witty images can turn into engagement goldmines for companies looking to connect with audiences on a more relatable level. What are your thoughts on memes taking the driver's seat in marketing strategies?
Man, Simon, you're spot on. It's absolutely wild how memes have evolved. They started off as just internet jokes, right? And now they're at the forefront of these sophisticated marketing strategies. Companies that get it right turn into overnight sensations because they manage to speak the language of the internet. It's all about timing and relatability, hitting that cultural nerve at just the right moment. Trust me, a meme can be a more powerful tool than a Super Bowl ad if it catches on.
Yeah, Joe, it's like memes are the new word of mouth, but on steroids, right? But here's my beef with it. Not every brand can ride that meme wave successfully. It's like, sure, when it works, it's a home run, massive engagement, shares through the roof. But then think about the brands that miss the mark. When a meme flops, or even worse, comes off as trying too hard, that's internet infamy right there, and not the good kind. And let's chat about the lifespan of a meme for a sec. They burn bright, but man, do they burn fast. Today's hilarious meme is tomorrow's old news. So while a Super Bowl ad has months of shelf life, a meme could be dead in a day. Do you think then that relying on memes is kind of playing marketing roulette?
For sure, Simon. Playing with memes is like gambling in the fast lane. Now consider this. According to some marketers, around 60% of millennials would actually engage with a brand that they've seen leveraging funny or relevant memes. That's not insignificant because it shows just how effective meme marketing can be when targeting a younger audience. And think about this. Memes often cost less than typical ad campaigns due to their simple nature and mostly organic distribution channels. You're essentially using cultural currency to buy real eyeballs without the hefty price tag. But you are right, it's tricky business fine-tuning the approach so it doesn't backfire. For brands considering meme marketing, there's a clear need for deep cultural understandings, like knowing what will likely resonate or fall flat. Trends also move at hyperspeed online, meaning a meme strategy needs constant updates and active participation in the culture to stay relevant. Hence why some brands set up entire teams just monitoring social sentiments and trends to nail down this exact timing. So while meme marketing holds immense power for engagement, it demands a finger always on the cultural pulse and an ability to act swiftly and smartly.
Totally, Joe. It's like memes are the ninjas of marketing, silent but ridiculously effective when they strike. Just imagine being in that meme-making war room. It's not just about being funny. It's a full-on strategy session, blending humor with timing and relevance. That's some high-stakes comedy right there.
Absolutely, Simon. It's like you're constantly walking a tightrope, isn't it? Trying to balance smart, timely humor with the brand's voice, all encapsulated in just an image or two. It's fascinating, really. You've got to wonder, how do these marketing teams keep up with trends that literally change overnight? What's the real secret to staying relevant without crossing into trying too hard territory?
Yeah, you've hit the nail right on the head, Joe. It's like staying relevant in meme marketing is all about speed and authenticity. The teams behind these memes, they've got to be quick on their feet, like lightning fast. But here's the tricky part. They need to sound genuine, not just spit out memes that feel like they're ticking a box. The secret sauce, so to speak, is really about having your ear to the ground. Good marketing teams are constantly scrolling social media, watching how conversations evolve around topics, and jumping in when the time's right. They use tools, like social listening platforms, which let them track what's trending in real time. This helps them craft content that feels immediate and, natural, like it's coming from a person, not a corporate machine. And another thing is flexibility, man. Sometimes what worked yesterday won't cut it today. So being able to pivot quickly without losing your brand voice, that's crucial. It's a wild ride for sure, but getting it right, that's when you see those viral successes that every brand dreams of.
Yeah, exactly, Simon. It's all about striking that balance between being culturally savvy and maintaining authenticity. Like, you're not going to throw just any meme out there because it's trending. It's got to resonate with what your brand stands for too, right? Take Wendy's, for example. They're nailing this game. They've created a unique voice that's sassy but still in line with their branding. It's not forced. It's actually pretty hilarious. It hooks people because it feels real and timely. I think the crucial thing here is not just to listen and react, but also anticipate where these conversations could go. And man, having that bendy flexibility to adapt quickly without coming off as stale or worse, irrelevant, that's the gold standard in meme marketing. What do you think, audiences? Have any favorite examples of brands doing memes right?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like Wendy's isn't just selling burgers, they're serving up sass with a side of fries. Who else is out here spicing things up in the meme kitchen? Remember that time IHOP became IHOB for burgers? Classic twist. Got everyone talking. What other brands have caught your eye with their meme magic?
Oh man, Simon, IHOB was like a marketing genius wrapped in a bun. It really flipped things around. But you know what? Denny's is also playing the meme game strong. They've got this whole offbeat, quirky vibe going that just clicks with the internet folks. And let's not forget about Netflix. They're masters at using show references and tugging on those fandom heartstrings, making memes that feel like inside jokes almost. It keeps their content viral and super shareable. So, dude, thinking about all these strategies, what do you think makes a brand's meme sharing really stand out? Is it more about the humor or is it the shock value, maybe?
Joe, while humor and shock value definitely grab attention, I'm going to say it isn't just about those flash in the pan moments. Think about it. A successful meme marketing strategy, it's way more about consistency and personality. Like brands that continuously engage with their audience in a voice that's true to their identity, those are the ones that make memes work over time. Let's take a step back and look at this from another angle. When every brand jumps on the meme bandwagon just cause it's trendy, we risk diluting genuine interactions. For instance, if a luxury brand tries too hard with humor that doesn't match its usual tone, it could come off as disingenuous, right? That mismatch can confuse consumers or worse, erode trust in the brand. So really, the standout factor isn't just being funny or shocking, it's knowing who you're talking to and keeping your brand's voice consistent across all posts. That's what builds a real, lasting connection. Brands need to play the long game in meme culture, meshing persona with clever content. What do listeners think? Does it stick more when memes fit the brand's established voice, or is it all fair game in meme land?
Totally with you, Simon. It really is about that authentic, consistent voice. And this actually reminds me of a time when I was starting out with our own small venture before the podcast got big. Like, we tried hopping on every trend, using whatever memes were viral at the moment to gain some traction. But here's the kicker. We weren't really thinking about whether those memes fit our brand or spoke to our specific audience. We just thought, hey, it's trending, it must work, right? It ended up feeling disjointed and honestly kind of off-brand for us, which didn't really resonate with our followers. So we took a step back, reassessed our approach, and started focusing on content that truly matched our persona and values. And man, it changed everything. Our engagement levels started improving because our audience could see the authenticity in our efforts. They knew we weren't just throwing random stuff at them, but were being thoughtful about what we shared. It kind of proved that while memes are powerful, they need to align with who you are as a brand to truly hit home. It's like guiding a ship. If you keep changing directions with each wave, you're never going to reach your destination, right? What about our listeners? Anyone else got any stories about meme marketing hits or misses?
Yeah, Joe, it's like memes are that spice in the marketing recipe. You add too much and it's overwhelming, too little and no one notices. It's an art form, really. Hey, listeners, who do you think is absolutely nailing their meme game? Or better yet, who totally missed the mark? Share your favorites.
Oh, and speaking of meme mechanics, Simon, did you know that some of the most iconic ad memes were almost accidents? They weren't even meant to go viral. It's those spontaneous moments that really catch fire.
No way, really. It's like sometimes you just strike gold without even digging for it, huh? So, do you think it's mostly the spontaneous stuff that ends up going big, or is there a bit more method to the madness than we're seeing?
Well, Simon, it's a mix, honestly. Like, while spontaneous virality happens, there's usually quite a bit of strategy underlying most successful meme ads. It's this blend of relatability, humor, and perfect timing that really does the trick. Think about it. Companies that understand their audience can craft messages that resonate on a personal level, making them more likely to be shared. And timing? Man, that's critical. Releasing a meme when the topic is hot means you're way more likely to catch that viral wave. So yeah, there's definitely method in the madness. It's just cloaked under layers of seemingly off-the-cuff genius. What do you think? Do the best memes feel spontaneous because they're designed to feel that way?
You've got a point there, Joe, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a sec. See, sometimes I feel like these brands almost try too hard to emulate that spontaneous vibe. It's like they're gearing up with all this strategy and insight, which is cool and all, but then the meme comes out looking too polished, too perfect. Doesn't that kind of, strip away the genuine raw edge that makes memes so relatable in the first place? And timing. Yeah, crucial. But there's this fine line, right? Jump on a trend too late, and you're just another echo in the void. Too early, and people are like, huh, what's this supposed to mean? It's kind of hilarious how delicate that balance is. So while I get the tactic behind crafting these killer ad memes, part of me wonders if we're losing the soul of what makes a meme. Well, a meme. What do our listeners think? Are these hyper-strategized memes hitting the mark, or do they miss the spontaneous spirit of what a meme should be?
Yeah, Simon, you're hitting a real nerve there. It's like, where do you draw the line between strategy and spontaneity? And man, I totally get that feeling of seeing something just too polished. It can feel less heartfelt, less genuine. When everything is overly calculated, it kind of drains the meme magic, doesn't it? There's this real charm in memes that seem to just happen. They capture a moment or feeling that's so specific yet universal, and that's why they resonate. It feels like catching lightning in a bottle. So yeah, while these strategies are crucial for sure, maintaining that unrefined appeal, that authenticity, is what really keeps a meme relatable. Losing that would be like missing the heartbeat of meme culture itself. What about you listeners? Ever stumbled upon a meme that felt too crafted and just didn't click? How did that make you feel?
Whoa, time flies when you're diving deep into the memeverse, huh, Joe? All right, folks, huge thanks to everyone for tuning in today. Your thoughts and stories seriously lit up this discussion. Make sure you come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. We've got even more wild topics to unravel. Keep those comments coming, whether they're polished or spontaneous, we want to hear them all. Until then, keep sharing those memes and keep it real. See ya.
Absolutely, Simon. And hey, who knows? Maybe one of those comments will spark our next big discussion. Catch you all in the meme stream tomorrow.
For sure, Joe. Hey, maybe one of our listeners will create the next viral meme that we'll end up talking about. Keep those creative juices flowing, folks. Catch you on the flip side.